I signed the lease on a Thursday afternoon, which is the kind of detail that only matters later when you're trying to figure out exactly where things went wrong. The rent was almost too good. I told myself I was overthinking it. After weeks of apartments I couldn't afford or couldn't stomach, my judgment had gone soft. The landlord met me outside, late 60s, gray hair, clean shirt, pressed with the particular care of a man who needed to be trusted. He shook my hand without smiling. "Third floor," he said. "You'll want to keep the window in the back bedroom closed." I almost asked why, but he was already moving toward the door, keys out, and something about the set of his shoulders made me decide I didn't need to know. Not yet. The building sat 15 minutes from my office, 2 blocks from a grocery store, close enough to the train station to walk without thinking about it. Everything about it made sense, on paper. That should have been the first warning. The apartment appeared smaller than the listing photos, but that was true of every place. The living room opened into a narrow hallway with the kitchen off to one side and the bedroom at the far end. I wandered through the rooms while he lingered near the entrance. The apartment was mostly empty, a coat rack in the hallway, a small mirror by the front door, a single coffee mug on the back shelf of one of the kitchen cabinets. I picked it up. "The last tenant leave this?" He glanced over. "Looks like it." I asked if he wanted me to toss it, but he shrugged it off. People left things behind all the time. We signed the lease at the kitchen counter. When we were done, he handed me the keys. I asked what happened to the last tenant. He looked out the window. "Left without giving notice." He nodded once. "It happens." I didn't press the issue. A few minutes later, he left. I stood alone in the apartment, listening. Footsteps somewhere below, a television through the wall, a door closing on another floor. For the first time in months, I finally had a place to live. Moving took most of the weekend. By Sunday evening, the furniture was arranged and the boxes mostly unpacked. The apartment already felt familiar except for the smell. It wasn't unpleasant, just someone else's, strongest in the hallway, noticeable near the bedroom door, occasionally catching me in the kitchen by the window. By the end of the week, it mostly faded. Sometimes, walking through the hallway, it came back. Always the same spots. The first few nights passed quietly. I told myself I was exhausted from the move. The mornings told a different story. No matter how many hours I slept, I woke up tired. The fatigue persisted through the afternoon. Coffee helped. It didn't fix anything. On the second night, the hallway light flickered once as I carried a box from the bedroom. The bulb flashed and held. I made a note to replace it and forgot by morning. A few days later, I woke up standing in the kitchen. The apartment was dark. The microwave clock read 2:03. I went back to bed. People sleepwalked. Stress did strange things. A new place could throw off your routine. 3 nights later, it happened again. This time, the cold tap was running. I turned it off and went back to bed. Evenings started slipping away. I'd sit on the couch after dinner, check my phone, and realize 2 hours had passed. I blamed work and fatigue and left it at that. Near the end of the first week, I saw the figure for the first time. I was lying in bed, somewhere between awake and asleep, the bedroom door open. From where I lay, I could see down the hallway, dimly lit by light coming through the living room window. At the far end stood a tall shape. I looked at it for a moment, then recognized it. The coat rack the previous tenant had left behind. I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning, the coat rack was inside the hallway closet. I stared at it. The memory came back slowly. I must have put it away while unpacking. I accepted that. A day later, I ran into the landlord outside. I mentioned the coat rack. He looked surprised. "You didn't move it?" When I said I must have, he nodded and moved on. I believed it without reservation. The next night I woke standing in the hallway, fully awake, no gradual awareness of it. The bedroom door was open and I was facing it, slow-minded but not scared. I walked back to bed and fell asleep. In the morning I noticed the soles of my feet. Fine, dark dust covered them both. The floors were clean. I'd vacuumed them myself. I washed it off in the shower and left for work. The next few days felt almost normal. Work, groceries, laundry, television, sleep. I nearly convinced myself the odd moments were behind me. Then, late one night, walking down the hallway toward the bedroom, the light flickered again. I stopped. The bulb flashed once, brightening the hallway before dimming. For a fraction of a second, something tall stood at the far end, in the spot I'd just come from. Then the light held, and the hallway was clear. I waited. Nothing moved. I went into the bedroom and closed the door. I stayed awake longer than usual, checking the doorway every now and then. When I finally fell asleep, I left the bedside lamp on. 3 weeks after moving in, the sleepwalking became a routine. It didn't happen every night, but often enough that I expected it. I didn't just wake up somewhere else in the apartment. I always woke up in the hallway. I was always facing the bedroom. I didn't notice the pattern at first. After the 4th or 5th time, I started paying attention. Whether I woke up near the kitchen, halfway down the hall, or beside the front door, I was always facing the bedroom. I assumed there was a mechanical reason. Maybe I turned around before waking. I looked up sleepwalking online, picked the most mundane explanation, and stopped searching. But the fatigue persisted. I would sleep, dream nothing, and wake up exhausted. Coffee and cold showers helped temporarily. Nothing fixed it. At work, I caught myself staring at my monitor without reading. One afternoon, my manager asked if I was all right. I said I wasn't sleeping well. He laughed and said nobody was. We dropped it. I started checking my phone frequently. I was losing track of time in small stretches. One night, I checked my screen usage settings before bed. The next morning, I checked again. The phone had been active for 37 minutes, from 2:11 a.m. to 2:48 a.m. I had no memory of touching it. I turned the tracking feature off. 2 days later, I experienced sleep paralysis for the first time. I knew the standard explanation. The brain wakes up before the body. When I opened my eyes and realized I couldn't move my arms, I wasn't scared. I assumed I knew what was happening. I had left the bathroom light on. Its glow spilled through the cracked doorway and illuminated the bedroom floor. I could see the foot of my bed. A tall figure stood there. I tried to focus on his face. My eyes drifted there automatically. I saw a hat, a coat, shoulders, and an absolute blank where the face belonged. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't close my eyes. I looked at him, and he faced me. That lasted maybe 2 minutes. My mobility returned. I sat upright. The room was empty. I switched on every light in the apartment. I checked the hallway, the kitchen, the closets, and the bathroom. I found nothing. By 4 a.m, I was at my computer searching for sleep paralysis experiences. I found the Hat Man. The name appeared across different websites and forums. People described a tall figure in a dark coat and wide-brimmed hat, watching from doorways or standing at the foot of the bed. I read through the accounts until sunrise. Thousands of people reporting the same figure pointed to a common neurological glitch. I accepted it as a shared hallucination. The next day, I bought blackout curtains and stopped sleeping with the bathroom light on. A week later, the second episode occurred. The figure was no longer at the foot of the bed. He stood right beside it. I could see the texture of his coat. The hat sat low. The empty space tilted toward me. I couldn't move. The moment my paralysis broke, the room was empty. I barely slept for the rest of the week. At work, I drank enough coffee to make my hands shake. The sleepwalking continued. The fatigue persisted. Every night, I stared at the bedroom doorway before falling asleep. The third episode happened on a Tuesday. I opened my eyes. The paralysis was already active. My arms and legs were locked. I looked past the figure to the wall behind him. The drywall was gone. In its place was a rectangular opening. Beyond the edge of the drywall was sheer depth. The opening extended farther back than the building's floor plan allowed. There wasn't enough physical space for it to exist. The figure stood inside the threshold. I stared at the empty space beneath the hat. A word registered in my head. It didn't arrive through my ears as sound. It formed directly as a thought. The word was my name, or a close approximation of it. The paralysis broke. I sat upright. The room was empty. The wall was solid drywall. I blamed sleep deprivation. I held on to that explanation because the alternative was unacceptable. The next evening, I looked up the building's history. I searched the address, the landlord's name, and the property management company. The results were mostly old listings and rental records. Then, I found an archived tenant forum. The thread was 3 years old, with 4 comments and no subsequent activity. The username was Leave Now. The account had only posted in that single thread. The user described poor sleep, sleepwalking, and lost time. The final comment was a single paragraph. I stopped replying because I stopped being here. If you're reading this about that building, it asks you things. Don't answer. That's all I know. I read the comment again. The refrigerator motor ran in the kitchen. A car passed on the street below. The wording bothered me because it was specific. Fake stories usually rely on vague threats. This was an instruction. It asks you things. I copied the text into a document and saved it to my desktop. The user's symptoms matched my own. I opened the document every few days just to read the final line. The paralysis episodes continued. The figure appeared sporadically, always standing in silence, facing the bed. Every time I woke, I thought about the forum post. Near the end of the month, I lay awake staring into the hallway. Stress and sleep deprivation caused sleepwalking and paralysis. I could accept that my brain invented the figure and the empty face, but the medical explanations couldn't account for the forum post. The next time I woke up with dirt on my feet, I paid attention. Both feet were coated. The dust was dark gray and fine, with a slight grit. I rubbed some between my fingers before going to the bathroom. After washing my feet, I inspected the apartment. The floors in the hallway, bedroom, and kitchen were clean. I ran my hand along the baseboards and found nothing. There was no dirt anywhere inside the unit. I grabbed my phone and took pictures of the floor, my feet, the empty hall, and the bedroom doorway. I wanted proof. I saved the photos and went to work. That evening, I looked into the building's history. I searched for construction records or tenant complaints. The unit had changed hands 5 times in 6 years. The rent had stayed below market value to ensure continuous occupancy. I scrolled through archived rental sites. I found a 1-star review from 4 years ago. It read, "Left after 1 month." The account had no other activity. I found a neighborhood social media post from 2 years earlier asking for information about the building. There were no replies. I copied the address into another search. An old rental listing retained one comment attached to a first name: Marcus. I spent an hour locating a social media account matching his demographic details. I sent a direct message. On the fourth day, my phone vibrated. I received a message. "How did you find me?" Another message appeared. "Can you meet somewhere public?" We arranged to meet at a downtown coffee shop that afternoon. Neither of us suggested meeting near the building. Before the meeting, I continued researching. A few days earlier, I had found a clinical sleep paralysis forum. Users discussed sleep disorders and medical experiments. One thread contained instructions for voluntarily entering sleep paralysis via a specific breathing pattern. The author claimed deliberate entry allowed the user to remain an observer. I copied the breathing instructions. I revisited the Leave Now thread. One line caught my attention. "I've been researching how to confront it rather than avoid it. I keep reading that you have to meet it in the space it occupies. I think I know how. I'm not going to write it here." I added the text to my notes. Next, I found a cached forum page discussing the Hat Man. A comment near the bottom read, "The only grounding technique that works is anchoring your identity, your full name, a specific memory." I wrote a summary: candles as boundary markers, a breathing pattern to induce the state, and stating your identity while paralyzed. It formed a practical sequence. I had constructed a method to initiate contact. I met Marcus the following day. The coffee shop was crowded. Espresso machines hissed over the speakers. Marcus arrived late. I recognized him from his photos, though he looked older. He left his coat on and scanned the room. "You still live there?" he asked. I nodded. "How long?" "About 2 months." I told him about the sleepwalking, the paralysis, and the figure. "Same as me," he said. The living person was confirming the events. "What did you do?" I asked. "I left," he said. "Just left?" "In the middle of the night. I took my wallet, keys, and phone. I got in my car and never went back." "No hesitation?" "No." I asked if he had consulted anyone. "A few people," he said. "None of them would stay in the building." "I never found anyone who went in and came out better," he added. I asked what caused the phenomena. He gave a short laugh. "I don't know. I stopped wanting to know." I had assumed gathering data was the solution. "You've been researching," he said. I nodded. "Me too. I thought if I understood it, I could fix it. That was my mistake." He looked directly at me. During the paralysis, it asks questions about who you are, what you remember. I thought of the voice forming my name. I hadn't mentioned it. "Did you answer?" I asked. "No, never." "Why not?" My instincts told me to stay quiet. I asked what would have happened if he had answered. "Whatever you're planning, don't," he said. "Looking into it, facing it, that's exactly what it wants." He stood up, put money on the table, and pulled on his gloves. He stopped before walking away. "If you find instructions online about confronting it, they weren't written by someone who came back." He left the coffee shop. I returned home. I reread my notes: candles, breathing, identity. Marcus had run. Every previous tenant had run. I concluded that was why no one had solved it. My phone vibrated. A text from Marcus read, "Don't try anything, please." I read it, set the phone on the desk, and left his message unanswered. The morning I woke up with dirt on my knees, I stopped trying to rationalize it. I had debated whether I was just exhausted or if my sleep cycle was broken. Seeing the dirt on my knees finalized my decision. I woke up facing the bedroom door. The position was standard by then. Dark gray dust covered both knees. It was the exact dust that had coated my feet weeks prior. I sat up and checked the apartment. The bedroom, hallway, kitchen, and living room floors were completely clean. I found nothing to explain the dust. I took more photos. My phone's folder contained pictures of dirty feet, the hallway, screenshots of forum posts, notes, dates, and times. I labeled the folder as evidence. People who hear this story always ask why I didn't move out. To me, the logic was clear. I believed I was close to an answer. I wanted to do what the prior tenants hadn't. Marcus and the forum users had run. I stayed. By midnight, I made a decision. I would wait 3 days. If nothing changed, I would perform the sequence. Finalizing the plan eliminated my uncertainty. I had a physical task. The next afternoon, I bought enough candles to form a continuous circle around a mattress. The cashier gave me a strange look. I told her I was preparing for a power outage. I brought the bags home and spent the evening arranging the room. I removed the mattress from the bed frame and placed it in the center of the bedroom floor. I measured distances, checked sight lines, and adjusted the candles until the spacing was perfectly uniform. The process was entirely practical. My daily routine consisted of waking up tired, going to work, and researching at night. Setting up the room gave me something concrete to do. The day before the planned date, Marcus sent a text message. I hadn't heard from him since the coffee shop. The notification appeared while I was eating dinner. "Have you tried anything?" I locked my phone and left it on the table. Minutes later, a second message arrived. "Daniel?" I finished my dinner. The screen went dark. I never opened the conversation. That night, the paralysis returned. I knew it before I opened my eyes. I woke up, realized I couldn't move, and then opened my eyes. The figure filled the doorway. He was closer than before. The word registered in my head again. My name, Daniel. He was waiting for a response. I remembered Marcus's warning to never answer. I remained silent. My mobility returned. The figure vanished. The clock read 3:17 a.m. I stayed awake until sunrise. I checked the clock constantly throughout the following day. I lost focus during work and conversations. At 2:45 a.m., I began the final setup. The mattress lay in the middle of the floor. I placed the candles around it one by one, forming a complete circle with no breaks. One last check of the notes. Threshold markers, breathing patterns, clear state identity. The folded paper went onto the nightstand. A lighter sparked. Each wick caught and held. The bedroom glowed with a steady amber light. Shoes stayed outside the circle. Bare feet stepped inside. The mattress took my weight. The time was 3:02 a.m. Stopping was an option for a moment. Lying inside a ring of candles on the floor in the middle of the night was objectively ridiculous. But the dust on the knees and the missing wall were facts. Eyes closed, the breathing pattern began. Slow inhale, hold, slow exhale, pause, repeat. The rhythm settled quickly. After a few minutes, my limbs grew rigid. This matched the documentation. The pattern continued. The transition occurred much faster than the forum stated. The instructions claimed voluntary induction took 30 minutes. Less than 10 minutes had passed. Motor control ceased instantly. A normal breath was followed by total paralysis. Lying flat on the mattress, the small flames formed a ring at the edges of vision. This was the expected outcome. But the timing was completely wrong. The documentation emphasized a gradual onset. This onset was immediate. A glance toward the bedroom doorway confirmed the change. The figure was already there. He was watching. The distance to the mattress was closing. Focus belonged on the breathing and the notes, but staring at him was the only option. The candles burned. The room was completely silent. Awareness began to fade. Keeping the eyes open required intense physical effort. My vision blurred. I tried to keep my eyes open. I failed. My eyes closed. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling had changed. I was lying on the mattress in my bedroom. The candles were still burning. My ceiling was white, flat drywall. I had stared at it every night for months. The ceiling above me now was dark gray, uneven, and stained. I realized I could move. The paralysis was gone. I sat up. The circle of candles still surrounded the mattress. Every wick held a steady flame. The bedroom walls retained their shape and layout, but the paint was faded. Dark marks covered the drywall. The bedroom door stood open. I stood up. My motor control was fully restored. I touched the mattress. The fabric felt normal. The glass holder was warm. I stepped over the candles and walked to the doorway. The hallway, kitchen, and living room were in their proper places, but the floorboards were worn and the walls were coated in grime. I stepped into the hallway. The air smelled of dry dust and stale enclosure. Standing still, I listened. The refrigerator motor was silent. There were no sounds from the neighboring units. No footsteps, doors, or plumbing. In the living room, my footsteps echoed. The apartment was entirely empty. The furniture was gone. The window glass was coated in dirt. Outside, the street layout remained, but there was zero movement. The street was deserted. Back in the hallway, my breathing had accelerated. I forced it to slow down. My phone screen was black. The power button yielded no response. It went back into my pocket. Faint writing marked the wall near the bedroom doorway. I stepped closer. The letters were gouged into the drywall. 3 words were visible. "Don't look away." Dust filled the grooves. I touched the text, then stepped back. More scratches covered the walls near the closet and the front door. The handwriting and letter sizes varied. Most were illegible, overlapping in dense layers. A few remained clear. "It knows your name. Don't answer." The phrases matched the warnings from Marcus, the Leave Now account, and the tenant forums. The drawers were empty. Every cabinet was bare. The shelf where the previous tenant had left the coffee mug held a small black notebook coated in dust. I opened the cover. The first page contained a name: Marcus Hale. Turning the page, the handwriting remained consistent. The entries were short notes, dates, and observations. The penmanship deteriorated in the later pages. He documented the sleepwalking, the paralysis, the figure, and the missing time. Further in, the sentence structure broke down. One passage occupied an entire page. The thing asks questions, always personal questions, names, memories, family, childhood. It gets closer every time. Several subsequent pages were torn out. Others contained only fragments. One line repeated continuously: "Stay inside the light." I closed the notebook. My breathing was the only sound. Movement caught my eye through the kitchen doorway. Wide-brimmed hat. The movement lasted a fraction of a second. The figure crossed from one side of the hallway to the other, then vanished. I walked to the doorway. The hallway was clear. I checked both directions. I saw nothing. My pulse accelerated. The figure had always been static during the paralysis episodes. This was the first time I had witnessed it in motion. I held on to the notebook. I looked back toward the bedroom. The candlelight was visible from the kitchen. The circle of candles remained burning. I walked back toward the bedroom. Halfway down the hall, a voice spoke behind me. I turned around. The hallway was empty. The voice spoke again. It said my name. Daniel. Human voice, originating from a few feet away. The tone was inquisitive. It was the same entity from the paralysis episodes. I backed toward the bedroom. The voice called my name again. The proximity shifted. I could not isolate the source. I remembered the notebook's instruction. Stay inside the light. I continued moving backward. As I neared the bedroom doorway, the voice spoke a third time. Daniel. Are you there? The voice belonged to my mother. The tone and pitch matched her vocal patterns, but the cadence was mechanical. My mother had been dead for 9 years. The voice called again. Daniel? The source sounded farther down the hallway. I didn't answer. I kept retreating. I was 3 feet from the bedroom doorway when a second voice spoke. It was Marcus. Don't look behind you, he said. The sound originated from the front door. I stopped. I stared down the hallway. The space remained completely empty. Marcus spoke again. This time, the audio came from directly behind my head. Daniel. I backed into the bedroom, stepping into the ring of candles. Months after moving out, the forum visits stopped. The search for answers ended quietly, the way exhaustion ends, not as a decision, just as a thing that stopped happening. My routine returned to normal. One night, scrolling through my phone, the front-facing camera opened on its own. I looked for the hitch in my left eyelid, the one I'd had since I was 7 years old. A small, involuntary flutter, the only face I'd ever reliably recognized as mine. It wasn't there. The symmetry was perfect. My face looked like a careful, patient copy of someone I used to know. I stayed with that thought through the gray, sleepless hours of that morning. Then the memory surfaced, cold and uninvited. That night in the candle circle. I remember the ritual failing. I remember the silence when I stopped breathing. And I remember those missing 2 hours, the exact time it took for the Hat Man to step out of the shadows and press his hollow form into my cooling skin. The entity hadn't found me by accident. He had been waiting for someone with my particular rhythm, my specific anxieties, someone exactly like me. The morning after came, standing in a new bathroom, gripping the sink with both hands, practicing how to smile, running the same expression in the mirror again and again until the muscles stopped twitching and learned to hold the shape. I don't think about the new tenant. What I think about is the body that was left inside that candle circle, the one on the mattress. There is a quiet, a very particular kind of quiet, in no longer being required to carry what I was. No history pulling at the joints. No grief. If I am an imposter, I am a better version of the original. What frightens me is that sometimes, late at night when the apartment is quiet, I catch myself about to remember something. A name. A face. Someone I must have loved once before I became this. And then it passes. And I let it. Twilight Rex here. Thanks for being here for this. I put a lot into these, and it means everything that you stay till the end. Back again later this week. Until then, good night.